Please go to elithecomputerguy.com in order to view schematics, code, and more for the projects that you are learning about. Welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to show you basic networking configurations on a Linux server. Now, I will warn you with this particular video, this might be one to make your brain hurt a little bit, and that's okay. That's okay. When you start trying to explain how networking works in the Linux world, we get into one of the big issues where this should not be that complicated of a subject, but because there are so many distributions, there are so many versions, there are so many ways of doing any one thing in the Linux world, when you get something basic as simply managing your IP addresses, that can get a little bit more complicated. Again, remember when we're talking about Linux, we're really talking about GNU Linux. What we mean by GNU Linux is the kernel, and then literally everything else within the operating system is something that is added on. And so one of the issues that you run into is, again, depending on the version, depending on the distribution, depending on a lot of different things, you may be using different tools to be able to manage your networking services on your particular Linux system. So while you're watching this video and I'm showing you these demonstrations, just kind of keep this in mind. So I'm using Ubuntu 18.04.3 LTS server version for when I do these demonstrations. So if you're using Ubuntu, if you're using a rather modern Ubuntu, everything that I show you today should work. But if you're using a Linux distribution and what I show you today doesn't work, well, then you may just have to go off and do some Google searching. Again, that's one of the problems with the Linux world. Things that should be relatively simple wind up being complicated simply because there really are so many options. Again, options can be a good thing, or they can be a pain in the butt. So what I'm going to be showing you how to do today on the Ubuntu servers, I'm going to show you how to find your IP address and your subnet mask. I'm going to show you how to be able to find your default gateway. I'm going to show you how to find your DNS servers. Then what I'm going to show you how to do is how to release and renew your DHCP IP address. And then I'm going to show you how to create a static IP address on your server. Again, this will all be within the Ubuntu 18.04.3 LTS server. So again, everything that I show you today, you know, kind of keep the process in mind. Just realize for you to do it, you may have to do a little bit of Google searching. So with that, let's go over to the server so I can show you how all this works. So here we are at my Ubuntu server. Again, I'm running this on a Mac operating system and using VirtualBox in order to virtualize the instance of the Ubuntu server. For the networking component, just realize if we go into settings and we go into network, for what I'm showing you today, I'm using a bridged adapter and I'm actually using a hardwired connection for the networking interfaces. So when this virtual machine goes to communicate with the outside world, it will be going through a bridged adapter. So if you are using the NAT on here or NAT network or something else, some of the settings, some of the things that you see may be a little bit different than what I'm showing you. Shouldn't be significantly different, but just something to keep in mind. So let's log in to my my little server here. We're going to go on with Bob again, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here we go. We are now logged into the server. Let me clear the screen. And now the first thing that I'm going to show you how to do is find your IP address. Now back in the old days, like a couple of days ago, I would use Ifconfig. Again, this is an important thing to understand in the Linux world. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So for a long time, we have been using the command Ifconfig. So if you go back and you're researching something, again, something about networking, and they tell you to use Ifconfig, that was the tool that was used for a really freaking long time, right? And so if you use the Ifconfig tool, basically with this is going to give your IP address. So it's going to tell you what your internet connection is, what the name of your network connection is, so ENP0S3. So whenever we're modifying configurations for this particular network connection, that is what the name is going to be. Do remember, with a computer, you may have multiple network connections, right? You may have 3 or 4 or, I don't know, 10 different network cards in your system. So each one of them could be configured differently. So whenever you're going in and doing modifications, do make sure you're modifying the right network card. So this is the name of the network card. If there were more network cards, you'd see more names. We can see that it has the INET. So this is the TCP IP address of 10.0.1.4, and it has a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So again, Ifconfig, to be clear though, is the old way of doing it, although as all these things do, it still works. But to be clear, they really are trying to get rid of Ifconfig. Instead of Ifconfig, what they want you to do now is use the IP tool. So simply IP, and to find your address, you simply do space addr, and this will give you the address. If we hit enter, now if we're taking a look at this, we can see we're basically getting the same type of information that we're getting out of Ifconfig, but it's just in a different format, right? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to the second entry here. Again, that is going to be our network interface, ENP0S3, just like we just saw up here with Ifconfig. And then we can come down, we can look at some different information. And now for our internet address here, we can see that it's a 10.0.1.4, just like it is up here. But instead of actually saying what the subnet mask is, spelling out the subnet mask, you get the /24. So in the networking world, you'll see this. So a class A network is a /8, a class B network is a /16, and of course a class C network would be a /24. So depending on how many octets are in your subnet mask, you would do the slash and whatever that is. So what I can see here then is I have an internet address of 10.0.1.4, and it's a 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. So that's, again, just one of those little bit of differences. And again, for you doing things your own way, I still like Ifconfig. I use Ifconfig, but to be clear, apparently everybody is supposed to be getting pushed to the IP tool for dealing with IP addresses. And so you type in IP space addr. This is what you get. You come down here. This will tell you what the name of your network adapter is. This will tell you what the network address is. And then the slash, that tells you what the subnet mask is. And so that's all there is in order to find what your IP address is. Let me clear the screen. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what your default gateway is. So again, lots of tools, lots of tools to find out what your default gateway is. I just picked this one. If you know a different way of doing it, do a different way. There's a tool called routes. So you can do route space -n. Basically what this is going to do is it's going to show you how traffic gets routed from your computer to the outside world. And then -n, what this does is actually gives you the IP addresses. So what I'll show you is if I simply do route without the -n, and we go down here, what we can see is the destination default, and then we just see this gateway, right? So when it says gateway, we just see gateway. Well, that's not really useful. So that's like the name of the gateway, but I don't really need to know the name of the gateway. I need to know the IP address of the gateway. So I do route space -n. Basically that says turn this into numbers instead of names. And then what I can see here is now with this, I have the destination, so default, basically anything that is outside of this network, and the gateway is going to be 10.0.1.1. And so that's what my default gateway is. And so this is a way that you can go and just take a look at how the routing is done in your particular Linux box. And something to think about is if you have a simple Linux box, again, like this is a simple server, you should only have a few settings here, again, with how this is supposed to work. If you're having networking issues with your Linux server, you're going in behind somebody else, and for some reason you're getting weird sporadic problems. If you come here and you see a lot of other records in this routing table, it might mean that basically you have bad records, or you may have problematic records within this table, and that you'll probably want to eliminate those. That might be one of the problems that's going on. We're not going to get into that today. All we care about today is this first. When we look at 0.0.0.0, this is the default. What is the gateway? 10.0.1.1. Yay, that works. Again, one of the big problems, especially when you're using DHCP in the real world, is sometimes when somebody's setting up the DHCP server, they simply fat finger something, they plug in the wrong default gateway. They put 10. Again, like they do like 10.1.1.1 instead of 10.0.1.1. You can't get to the outside world, and simply the reason is because you don't have the right default gateway. So this is a way you can go in and take a look at that. So let me clear the screen again. And now we're just going to go in and take a look at the DNS. So this is using systemd. Again, systemd is part of part of Ubuntu at this point. Depending on what version of Ubuntu and what distribution you're using, it may or may not be in what you're using. So this is one of those things that, again, might be problematic for you. You might have to go and do a Google search to find out what works on your particular system. So what we're going to be doing is we just simply want to see what our DNS servers are. So if we do systemd -resolve space hyphen, not a single hyphen, a double hyphen, and then we ask what the status is, and then we're going to hit enter. And so here we have the global settings. So for the DNS server, 10.0.1.1, we can see the DNS domain if we care about that. And then if we scroll down, what are the things we can see? So up here, this is like the global setting. It's supposed to be the global setting for the entire system, kind of like the default for any network cards you would install. But then we can go down and take a look at the specific network card. So again, ENP0S3, that's the name of the interface that we're using. Current scopes, blah, blah, blah. And then we can come down here to DNS servers, and we can see it's 10.0.1.1. See the DNS domain is verizon.net. So I know that's how it's supposed to be. And so that's a way I can go in and check to see what the DNS servers are to make sure why or why not the DNS is resolving properly. And so that's the basic way to see what your IP address is, how to see what your default gateway is, and how to see your DNS. So to get out of here, all you do is you press Q. And now you're out of here. So let's now talk about DHCP. So I'm going to clear the screen. And so at this point, we need to actually be able to release our DHCP address and renew our DHCP address. Again, you get a lot of weird networking problems where sometimes with leases expire, but things haven't synchronized properly, so you may need to renew your DHCP address. So with this, you simply use sudo, so super user do, and then you use a tool called dhclient. Client, if I can spell, space. And now one of the things I'm going to add is something called -v. So what -v is, you do not have to add -v. -v is verbose. So you'll see this in some of the tools that I'm showing you, where maybe sometimes you simply put verbose in or -v. And what this does is the computer then kind of tells you what's going on while it's going through a process. And then the important one that you do have to do is -r. So what this does is it forces the release of the DHCP address. So if we hit enter, and ask for the password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, killing old process, and so now it's done. The IP address has been released. If we do IP space addr to see what our IP address is, and we hit enter, we can see we come down here again to ENP0S3. That is our interface card, and we can see that it does not have an IP4 address. So let me clear the screen. Then past this, all you have to do in order to actually obtain a DHCP address is you simply use superuser_do again, dhclient. And then I'll do the space -v. So you don't need the space -v. This is simply for verbose, so it tells us what's going on. And then I hit enter, and we can see here, it goes through, and then it picks up the IP address for us. If we do IP addr at this point, we can come and we can now see we have the IP address of 10.0.1.14 with a /24. So that's a class C, a 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. And that's really all there is to releasing and renewing your DHCP address. From that, now we need to go in to actually modifying the static IP address. So let me clear the screen again. And now we're going to go in and we are going to edit a particular file. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to change directory, and then we're going to go to /etc/netplan. So Netplan is the tool that's currently used to kind of like manage the IP addresses and all that kind of stuff on the Ubuntu server. So we're going to go into the directory, and then what we're going to be looking for is the configuration file for Netplan. And it's a .yaml file, a .yaml. That is a networking configuration file. So we do an ls-l to list everything in the Netplan directory, and we see this 50-cloud-init.yaml. .yaml file. So this is the file that we are going to edit in order to give ourselves a static IP address. So what we're going to do is super user do. We are going to use Vim. Again, use whatever the hell text editor you want to use. I like Vim. I use Vim. So I'm showing you with Vim. And then you're going to do 50-cloud-init.yaml. Make sure that's all right, and then hit enter. And now we are in that .yaml file. And so from here, we're going to do some editing. So if we look right at this point in time, there's not a whole hell of a lot in this YAML file. And the main reason is because of this setting right here, dhcp4:yes. So basically what that means is, hey, go grab all of the information from the DHCP server, and so we don't need to write anything else, right? Well, we are going to actually go into here, and we are going to put everything in from a static. So instead of having yes, so I hit I is for insert. Then I'm going to delete yes, and I'm going to say no. Now again, there's no semicolons or commas or anything after that. You just simply put no, and then you go to the next line. From there, we're going to type in addresses. And so it's addresses, and then it's colon. And then you hit enter, and then you hyphen, space, and then whatever address you want this system to have. So we're just going to do 192.168.1.10. Basically, I'm just giving this a crap IP address, just so when we do the IP address command, you can see that it's truly different. And I haven't done anything else that's weird. Past that, I then need to do the /, and then I need to give what the subnet mask is. So this is one of those things that can confuse people. If you just put an IP address, it will fail. So you need to put the /, and then what the subnet mask is. So for 192.168.1.0 subnet, that's a /24, 255.255.255.0, class C, that's a /24, as said. Okay, and so past that, then we're going to go down, hit enter, and then we're going to do gateway 4, and then we're going to do colon. And see, as soon as I do colon, it automatically did that for me. It's nice. It does a little bit of its own self-editing in here, self-proofreading. Then I'm going to do space, and I'll do, let's say, 192.168.1.1, let's say. So again, if this was a normal network, it would look like that. Then I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to do nameservers. Then I'm going to do colon. Then I'm going to do enter. Then addresses. So what are the addresses for the name servers? Colon space, a little bracket. Then we can do 8.8.8.8, and then comma. So for a second DNS server, then I can do 1.1.1.1, let's say, and close the bracket. And so that's basically all that has to be done here. So we do go to DHCP4, we say no, we type in addresses, colon, go to the next line, hyphen, space, whatever the address is, / whatever the subnet mask is. We say gateway 4, we plug in the gateway 4 IP address. We say name servers, colon, and we do the addresses of the name servers, and that's really all there is to it. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit escape, then I'm going to hit colon, WQ. So again, depending on what editor you're using, what WQ does is it save and quit. So it saves what I've done and quits. So if you're using a different editor, just do that in whatever you're using. And then I'm going to hit enter. So we can come down here, we can see the YAML, it was written. If you have any errors in this, you will get errors. So just keep that in mind. Like I want to show you something here. All right, so we go back, oops, and we go to edit. So let's say I'm editing this. When I do something like, instead of addresses, I just do address, right? Again, a fat finger something. So I escape, colon, WQ, right, quit. And so we see that we have the 50-cloud-init.yaml file, and it has been written. Now, past this, do remember in the Linux world, you actually have to apply changes. So if you're changing a configuration file for an Apache server or a Squid server, something like that, you have to restart the service. Kind of sort of the same thing with Netplan. What you have to do is you have to type in sudo, you have to type in Netplan, space, and then you have to say apply. So until you do this apply, it's still running off of the old rules. Then I'm going to hit enter. You don't see any errors here. So if there are any problems in this file, there will be errors. When I did the apply, you see that there's no errors, so everything went through okay. Let me do clear, and then from here I can do IP space addr, hit enter, and what I can see when I come down here to enp0s3, here's the inet address 192.168.1.10/24. So that's showing me what the IP address is. So that's how you're able to add a static IP address and actually make the system use it. So that's really what there is to doing basic network configurations on a Linux box. The main thing to realize though is you may have to use different tools with your particular system. So just keep in mind what I showed you and then realize you might have to use those same steps literally just simply with a different tool. It's kind of like with Ifconfig. Ifconfig still works, but they want everybody to start using IP. So on your particular box, you may just have to use a different command in order to get to the same place. So those are the basic steps for configuring Linux networking on an Ubuntu server. Again, do realize with your particular server, depending on the version, the distribution, whatever the hell the previous administrator installed on it, you may have to go through more or less the exact same steps, but, you know, actually use a different piece of software or a different set of commands. So just kind of keep that in mind. Realize you may have to do a little bit of Googling in order to get to the same place. This is one of those areas, I have to say, that, you know, if you don't mind using a graphical user interface, if it's not bad to use a GUI on your Linux server, I do have to say using the GUI tools in order to administer your networking configurations is a hell of a lot easier and a hell of a lot simpler to do. But again, if you're using a Linux at the command line, these are the basic steps that you have to go through. So again, in order to find what your IP address is, use a tool called IP. In order to be able to release and renew your DHCP address, you use dhclient. You can use route space -n to see what your gateway is. But again, there's also a lot of other tools out there. I'm sure other people will say there's a better way of doing it. You can use that systemd status command in order to see what your DNS servers is. And then you can go in, you can change that .yaml file in your Netplan configurations in order to give yourself a static IP address. So this just gives you kind of that basic idea of what's going on. Again, depending on what system that you're using, you may use different tools. And to be clear, as with all of these things in the Linux world, you can get into the weeds quick. If you want to start doing some really fancy, complicated networking configurations, you can do a whole bunch of stuff on a Linux server. But in general, these are the tools that you're going to use. One of the nice things I do have to say about the Linux world, one of the good things about the Linux world is because it is generally so stable and it generally does do whatever the hell you tell it to do. The nice thing with the networking configurations is this is one of those things you set once and basically forget for the rest of the time that your system is up and running. So once you get everything working properly, the good part is you probably won't have to come back and mess with this a whole bunch. But, you know, realistically, you may have to go in and deal with things. You may also have to use different tools. So I remember when I had my servers in a co-location facility back when I started doing videos, and I actually had my own servers in order to do the videos. I actually had to download an additional tool to be able to set the speed of the network card. So my network card was a 100 gig network card. And so in order for it to work properly with the data center, instead of having it auto configure itself for the speed, I was required to statically assign whatever speed that network card was. And so that was something where I actually had to download and install a separate piece of software and use that to do the configuration for the network card speed. And so those are the kinds of things you have to be thinking about when you start dealing with networking. This isn't one nice package with a whole bunch of options and arguments and commands. It's, you know, dhclient and systemd and route this and blah, 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 blah. And again, you duct tape all that together and you get a server that somehow is able to communicate with the outside world. So with that, as always, I enjoy doing this video and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.